market under panel A and panel B. So this is all about the diagrammatical framework of short-run equilibrium under a perfect competition market. So once you easily understand this particular cost curves and the concept of the market under perfect where demand and supply are equal to each other at the point where D price, MR or MC are equal. So when MC concept has been denoted or MR, so automatically the cost curves will be the shapes of the cost curve or the graphs of the short cost curves will be drawn. Next one is long run analysis of perfect competition. Under this scenario, long run, obviously, when we talk about long run analysis, we always choose the concept of the short run analysis under this long run because long run will be this particular analysis has been derived from the short run analysis and ultimately how to show up this diagram using the short run cost curves. So before I begin, you need to understand that what cost would be needed. The costs are the average cost, I mean short run average cost, short run marginal cost, long run marginal cost. So this is the concept that will be used. In fact, here also the concept has been used average total cost and marginal cost. In this, the same concept will be used marginal cost and average cost. But when we talk about the marginal and average cost or average total cost, short run analysis will be used and long run marginal cost and long run average cost concept will be used under long run analysis. So let's begin the diagram explanation. You have to draw first the LAC, long run average cost curve. So once you draw the long run average cost curve, just draw the another curve which is called a short run average cost curve. Just at the minimum point, just draw that curve, short run average cost curve at the minimum point of the LAC, that is long run average cost curve. So if you see the short run average cost curve, the short run average total cost curve cuts at the minimum point of the long run average cost curve. So once you draw the long run average cost curve and short run average cost curve which cuts or touches the average, you can say cost, short run average cost. So once you drawn the average short run average cost, now the another curve that you have to draw, that is the long run marginal cost curve. The point these two curves touches each other, that is the long run average cost curve and the short run average cost curve. These two curves touches at its minimum point. Once you get the minimum point of these two curves, just draw the long run marginal cost. So the shape of the marginal cost will remain the same in the long run average cost curve, which begin from little increasing to slowly, then little constant, and immediately rises frequently, and that's the shape of the long run marginal cost curve. So once you drawn the long run marginal cost curve at the minimum point of the average total cost, short run average total cost, and long run average total cost. So once the long run marginal cost intersect or cut the two curves, long run average cost and long run average total cost, the next curve will be drawn the short run marginal cost. This particular cost in the short run will always increase very frequently than the long run marginal cost curves. If you can see on the screen, it automatically just draw a rising curve of the cost curve, marginal curve, which is called the short run marginal cost curve, which where these all curves will intersect at its minimum point, and that point is equal to price is equal to marginal revenue is equal to long run marginal cost and the long run average cost. From the short curves, from short run cost curves, we can drive the long run cost curves, or you can say the equilibrium point of the long run cost curve, where all curves will intersect at its minimum point, where the equilibrium condition or equilibrium point has been derived, which states that the price is equal to marginal revenue or equal to long run marginal cost and the long run average cost. And this whole particular and the point which has been all cost curves intersect. That point is called equilibrium point, where the equilibrium price would be assumed as 100 and equilibrium quantity will assumed as 800 units or output. And this whole graphical representation is called the long run analysis of perfect competition, or the long run equilibrium of under perfect competition. So this is called the particular cost curves analysis under long run in case of perfect competition, where the all the inputs and cost of production will become changed. Firms can develop a more appropriate scale of plants so that they can utilize or they can produce the optimum level of output, where you can see this point, equilibrium point, is that point where the firm can produce the optimum level of output, and they can open the build up a more appropriate a scale of plant where they can produce more and more units of output, and in that particular point everything will be equal, especially the long run marginal cost and the average cost as well. So this is called long run analysis. Now we talk about the next market or next concept of market or type of market, that's called the imperfect market. So when we talk about in economics, imperfect market is a type of market structure which showing some but not all the features of perfect competitive markets. And that perfect markets which have a three main forms. The first one is monopoly, oligopoly, and monopolistic competition. So let's go through these topics one by one in detail. So let's begin from monopoly. Monopoly that comes from a Greek word which shows monos, which means one, and pollen, which means sell. That means there is only a one seller who sells goods and services in a market. A monopoly will always be defined from a term that is cartel. Cartel is also one of the type of market situation where the firms are always come together, agree to cooperate with another one with one and another to behave if there were only single firm and eliminate the competition among them. So this is called the one of the type of cartel, because cartel also includes the firms but in a very cooperative manner to behave very cooperatively, where they know that there is a single firm, and just to avoid the competitive or remove the competitive behavior among them. So that's called cartel. And monopoly, where there is a single seller of goods and services, because these concepts include in the cartel. So but they have to eliminate competitive behavior between them, as they are singles seller and the firms are also agree to cooperate, and that's called cartel. And that's the main reason these two both concepts are totally different, but monopoly involves in cartel. That's why there is we need to define to show up or distinguish between these two terms, monopoly and cartel. So let's talk about the sources of monopoly. There is only one producer or seller of goods, so it means or only one provider of services in the market. New firms, it's very difficult to enter into such market. Even especially the existing monopoly is considered in its field or industry. They have perfect knowledge in that. There is no available substitute goods or services and it is considered unique because of one seller. It controls the total supply of raw materials in the industry has no control over price. Very simple. Of course, the one seller, they have a total supply. They have a whole control about the supply of raw material, but they have no control over the price because this price will be made by the industry and that price will accept to the monopolistic or a one producer or seller. It owns a patent and copyright. As there's one seller, they have their own copyright, they have their own patent to use for a particular product or services that they sold or offer into a market. Its operations are under economies of scale. As economies of scale, they have a perfect coordination. In fact, the own marketing planning, the own marketing efficiency or production efficiency. So that's called. So whatever the operation is under control or under the economies of scale solely, which shows a perfect, you can say, a way to reach the products and services to the ultimate consumers in a particular given market. Classification of monopoly. Monopolies are classified according to the circumstances. So it depends upon the cost structure. What would be the law occurred into a particular region or the area of any other mean. So whatever, in fact, industries play a very important role in monopoly also when it comes to the price fixing. So that is also the you can see circumstances which being classified monopoly into that particular structure. There are types of monopoly. The first one is natural monopoly. The natural monopoly that it is a market situation with a single firm who supply the entire market due to the fundamental cost structure of the industry. It's very simple to understand. As monopoly, also the same definition will also apply into a monopoly as well. Now we talk about the legal monopoly. Legal monopoly is sometimes called de jure monopoly. It is also another form of the monopoly where the government grants to a private individual or firm over the product and services. But it means the government will grant a permission to a private individual or firm just control the market or offer the products and services at a given price, and that's called the legal monopoly. The next one is coercive monopoly. Coercive monopoly is also another type of monopoly where existing is also the same term, a sole producer and a distributor of goods and services by the means of legal process or illegal process as well, and that's called the coercive monopoly. The particular producer or distributor can also apply the or you can say offer the goods and services either legal or illegal. So most of the time such particular concept of monopoly will also violates into a free market just to avoid the competition, and in that sense illegal process will begin to you can say to exist into a market whether illegal way just to avoid the competition, and such type of monopoly called coercive monopoly which also exists in real world. So next we talk about the short-run analysis of monopoly. So as I told that if we talk about the short run, we always talk about the cost curve because the cost will be decided by the industry or whatever the price will be you can say implemented by the industry, the firms has to accept. So the curves will be the used in deciding the price of the monopoly, and the cost will play an important role to decide a price. price. So there are two main curves will be used, that is marginal cost curve and average cost. So if you draw the average cost curves, the marginal cost will cuts into the minimum point, as it is a conceptual framework of the cost curves, whether it will be the short run cost curve or the long run cost curve. So when we talk about short run cost curves, so these are the curves which has been drawn. So let's begin about the short run analysis. In the short run, the monopolistic is considered a price maker. That means under monopoly they have a full control. That means he can also make a price, and accordingly he can sell the product at different prices to different consumers, as they have a product which have a substitute for another, because they sell a plenty of the products, a differentiated products, which the products which have a close substitute available in the market, which has been sold by a sole producer or a distributor or a seller. So that's why the costs, these costs were also equivalent when it comes to analyze the market, the monopoly market into the short run. So we have to draw the two curves where the quantity will always be increased at the under a case of monopoly. So before I begin, let's draw the curves of average. You need to draw the average total cost curve and the marginal cost curve. So once we first draw the average total cost curve, and at the minimum point just draw the marginal cost curve which intersect at the minimum point of average total cost. The particular point where the you can say marginal cost curve, that point should be dotted before you draw the line. So when we talk about the point where these two curves intersect each other, just a little above that point, the original quantity curve, that means quantity demanded curve, will be drawn. That means the QD, or you can say OQ in other words. So that the OQ is the original quantity, where above the interaction point of marginal cost curve and average cost curve, that is the original quantity, that is OQ. So when we talk about OQ, so hey, this particular demand curve shows an original demand curve where the particular sole sellers or the producer or distributor sells a particular quantity at this particular price, which is called 12. So once the price has been decided and quantity has been decided by the sole seller, it could be 2000, it could be 1000 at a particular price to 12, 6, 7. So when we talk about short run analysis, the quantity demanded would get to, you can say, decrease to from 8000 to 2000 to 1000, as once the quantity demanded under the short run, the quantity demanded would get decreased. So there is a parallel shift of the quantity demanded which has been drawn and cut the marginal cost at its minimum point, that is the you can see the starting point of the quantity or the cost has lowers, and as a result there is a parallel shift of the quantity demanded. So as a result, the original Kyoger curve is a parallel shift to the OQ1. So OQ1, as a result, there is a parallel shift. The quantity demanded would also get decreased from 8000 to 2000, and ultimately from 2000 to 1000. Why this? Why the particular price has been increased from you can say 8 to 12, because the quantity has been declined, and when the quantity has been declined, just increase in the price from 8 to 12. So that's a particular conceptual framework in the short run. If any quantity demanded or any parallel shift to the quantity demanded just due to the costs different costs. As a result, the price will go up, and once it goes up, the point where the parallel curve of the demand curve intersect the marginal cost curve, and that particular point is called the quantity demanded line and has caused the increased price, that is 12. So this is the exact conceptual or graphical representation of the short-run analysis of monopoly, where they have a whole clause, they have, you can say, no close substitutes in the market, but as there is only seller who control over the market and sell the products and services to the ultimate consumers at the own setup price. So that's why this is a own setup price by the monopolistic, by a single monopolistic, where the parallel shifts of the demand curve, and that parallel shift of the demand curve cuts the marginal curve. That curve is that point is called the new quantity demanded line, and that quantity demanded line will automatically increase the price. So original price would be the 8, which also touch the average total cost just at the beginning, where the cost has been where the cost curve will become decline, and that set price is called it. So that's called the concept graphical representation of short-term analysis of monopolistic. So before you draw, just need to understand, before you draw such diagram, you need to understand how you draw firstly, and you should be aware about the basic concepts of the marginal cost and average total cost and the market equilibrium condition, where demand and supply would intersect. But in monopoly, they are only that's there is sole proprietor, so automatically the quantity demand would be the possible way to show up. Now we talk about here a long run analysis of monopoly. If you can check the curves is already shifts from original curve, that is OQM is already shift to MR. But how? It's very simple. You have to draw the same curve. That is the long run average cost curve at its minimum point, the long run marginal cost curve, and where the long run marginal cost would begin, you have to draw the short run average cost curve and the marginal, you can say, if you talk about the long run marginal cost curve, you have to draw the average short run average cost curve, which is below the midpoint or the interaction point of the long run marginal cost curve and long run average cost curve. So the curve which has been drawn below the interaction point of long run marginal cost curve and long run average cost curve, that is the short run average cost curve which has been drawn, and the touch point, the intersect point of long run average cost curve and short run average cost curve. That point is called equilibrium point, and when the equilibrium point would come, then the equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity will be drawn. So 24 would be the based on assumption is 24, and the equilibrium price is called 10. When we talk about the long run analysis, you to start into a market into a long run, the particular monopolist, single monopolistic could reduce the price, or once it reduced the price, the automatically the demand would get increased, the quantity or output would get increased. So the minimum point where the quantity would get increased, that point is called the interaction point of LMC and LAC, which the point denotes a alphabet, that is namely that is B. That's called you can say new output, where which increases the output at a lower price, which begin from 24 to 28, and the price go fall from 10 to 8. So the new equilibrium point is just below the interaction point. You just make a short-run average total cost curve. That is the equilibrium point, equilibrium price, equilibrium quantity. In the long run analysis, quantity would get decreased at that point where both long run marginal cost curve and average cost curve will intersect each other. That point is called a new quantity demanded point. A line will be drawn, and accordingly, a new price will be set up, which lower from the original price, which is 10, and the quantity will get increased. And when the quantity get increased, then a parallel shift has been parallel shift will be there, and as a result, the marginal review curve will be drawn, which is called a downward sloping, when that curve will cut off the interaction point of short run average cost curve and the long run marginal cost curve, where these two curves will intersect each other at its minimum point. The marginal revenue curve will be drawn. It means the revenue is the sole seller or a distributor will earn the revenue by adding up and by selling up the additional units of additional products, and that's called the marginal revenue. And accordingly, when the minimum point of long run marginal cost and the long run average total cost, the marginal revenue curve will intersect each other. That means there is a parallel shift of curve, that is marginal revenue, from the original demand curve, that is OQ. So this is the long run analysis of monopoly using the diagrammatical presentation of the particular concept. So in the long run, all the inputs and costs definitely get changed, but the single monopolistic can make an optimum scale or to set up an optimum plan to make the best possible use or to produce the best possible level of output in the long run. So in the to stand into a long run, a single seller has to reduce the price so that the quantity demand would get increased, and the more and more plant would get built up to provide or to produce the best level of output. And that's a main concept or the analysis of the long run of the monopoly. Let's go to the another concept, that is oligopoly. Oligopoly is also come from the Greek word that is oligo, which means few, and the poly means to sell. That means few seller or a small number of sellers aware about what the others would do in that particular market. Every decision should also depend on how the firms behave in relation to each other. That means in oligopoly, the conjectual interdependence is always be present. That means it's interdependent to each other. So whatever the decisions of one firm is also influences the decisions of the other firms into a market, and that's called the oligopoly. Characteristics: there are small number of firms in the market selling differentiated or identical or homogeneous products. The firm has control over the price because the small number of firms, of course, they provides the entire supply of a product. There is extreme difficulty or there is a difficulty level for new competitors to enter into such market. So that means there are small firms, full control over the price, and difficulty for new competitors to enter into such markets. Types of oligopoly: we talk about the perfect oligopoly if the firms produce homogeneous product. Differentiated oligopoly when we firms produce differentiated products. Collusive oligopoly when the firms cooperate with each other in determining price and output or any one of them or both. Non-collusive then behave or having a competition with each other. They don't cooperate to determine price or output or both, but in non-cohesive they don't cooperate. They basically they compete. They have in non-cohesive oligopoly. They have a competition with each other. They don't cooperate with each other in any of the determination of either price or output or both. Types of organization of oligopoly. There are two types of organization. The first one is cartel and the second one is collusion. Cartel, it is a formal agreement among the oligopolists to set up a monopoly price, allocate that output and share profits among all the members in the market. Collusion is a formal or informal agreement among all those oligopolists to adopt some policy while dealing with the or offering the goods and services into the market, and it also restrict and also reduce the level of competition into the market. But cartel will always maintain and cooperate with with all those members who are in the market, but collusion will always try to reduce the market and always put a restrictions either with the formal or informal agreement among them. And these are the two types of organizations of oligopoly. Now we talk about the how to analyze the oligopoly using King demand curve. What is King demand curve? King demand curve is a demand curve of an individual firm in such market. It has a king at the existing price. That means it is a known to decide. It is a known to use the existing price by the firm expectations of their rival actions, where the firm will change its price into the future. So that's called the king demand curve. And king, it could be called to a oligopolistic when existing price will cause existing price will become changed by the firm expectations of their action of their rival actions, which are likely to take if any changes in price done by the firm. And that's called the king demand curve. This is a shape of the king demand curve, that it's a partition of the demand curve. And when there is a partition of the demand curve, ultimately that's called the king demand curve. So if you draw the basically the P and the original P and original Q curve, it is a partition of the demand curve. First, you draw the first stage, the half portion, which is called the original price, and then you cut the original quantity or output, and where you just partition that the demand curve, will that point is called the P1, that is the decrease in price. And when decrease in price, the automatically the quantity will also get decreased, and that's called the king demand curve. When there is a partition, when they also have a full control but having a differentiated and identical products, due to which the partition has been occur, and accordingly these curves has been drawn, and the price would get decreased and quantity as well. And based on the new demand curve just above the or just below the original demand curve, or you can see the parallel shift of the demand curve, and accordingly on the new quantity. So once the new quantity has been drawn, the marginal revenue will generate once it touches the line to the axis. And accordingly, the marginal cost will be drawn as the same shape would be drawn. And once the marginal cost will be drawn, the equilibrium point which cuts the original output where demand is equal to average revenue. So this is the equilibrium condition of the demand curve, where demand is equal to average revenue. And from the you can see a new output, the marginal revenue could be achieved by a oligopolist when there is a partitions of the demand curve, and as a result, the marginal revenue would be for a certain period of time. It would become, you can say, vertical, and after having a vertical, the marginal revenue could also get declines, and as a result, the equilibrium level or point, that's called demand is equal to average revenue, as the marginal revenue could it will be derived from the average revenue in respective of their demand. So that's called the king demand curve, which is the partitions of the demand curves, and accordingly, a parallel shift of the demand curve has been made, and marginal cost plays a very important role, as while fixing up a new price, the cost will also plays a very important role, and that cost is called the marginal cost. So this is the graphical representation of the kinged demand curve. Now we talk about the monopolistic competition. Monopolistic competition is that market situation where in which there are many sellers and buyers who producing a highly differentiated products. And of course, it also called a perfect competition, but a differentiation in the product which has not been seen in case of perfect competition. As under monopolistic competition, product differentiation plays a very important role. It also gives a market power to the monopolistic firms, as each competitor will raise the price according to their own convenience without losing its customers. So in under monopolistic, they have their full power into the market. They are the price setter, I could say, who rise the price slightly without losing its customers, and the customers pay that price to the sellers as well. And such market is called the monopolistic market. These are the characteristics of monopolistic: large number of buyers and sellers, limited control over the price because the products are a product because of the product differentiation. In fact, the sellers offer the differentiated product or the similar product but not identical product. In monopolistic, product differentiation is a major tool for the sellers and the buyers. In fact, the new firms can easily enter into a market because the product differentiation, we have a greater competition, as the new firms offers the better and better differentiated products, and along with the new features of their products to offer to the customers. Economic rivalry in centers not only upon the price but also upon the product variation and product promotion. As it is based on the product differentiation,